So I'm KP Reddy, and I am what they call a serial entrepreneur, now investor. Generally avoiding work is my mission. And I'm the anti of what every entrepreneur probably tells you about working 80 hours a week and working lots of hours. I'm more 30, Anastasia? Yeah, 30. I try to work a lot less. What you learn over time is that affecting the numerator is a lot of work, which is how much money you make. Affecting the denominator, like how many hours you want to work, will really drive your effective rate way up. If you just work half the hours and make the same amount of money, you're twice as effective. So that's kind of my life's mission generally, and that's why I invest, because the ultimate scale is writing checks and investing in companies and not actually having to make the grind every day. So here's all my contact info. I give out my email address because I expect you to use it. I do all the Twitters and everything else, but a lot of times people hit me up for referrals, or can you tell me who you know in here. It's just a lot easier to do via email in terms of connectivity. And I'm on LinkedIn too, and I'm pretty flexible as who I consider a connection. Outside of the SEO telemarketers in India and in the Philippines who hit me up every day, I try to be pretty open. So a little background. I'm a general partner at CTW Venture Partners. How many of y'all have heard of us? Good, we like it that way. So we are about picking the opportunities. We generally 0 to times invest in people that come to us. We decide and pick, and we observe and we watch. There's kind of a rule in sales: you pick your customer, you don't let them pick you. That's exactly how we invest. So we're very quiet, generally Southeast focused. One of our investments is in London, where we actually are. The company is actually taking pollutants out of the atmosphere and turning it into graphene. We just won Technology of the Year award by the World Economic Forum. So get to go to Davos next year. Pretty cool. In the bucket list world. Last year I got to speak at South by Southwest, which was bucket list, and next year I get to go to Davos. So that's pretty cool too. CTW stands for Change the World. That is our thesis. Tell me how you're going to affect the lives of hundreds of millions of people, and you have my attention. If you tell me you're going to increase my analytics on social media, I'm generally disinterested. That's just not my thing. That's the thing for a lot of people, not our thing. We also are active investors. So I'm actually running one of our investments. So we're investor operators. So we invest and we take over. We also put lots of money in. Our first rounds are usually $5 million. So 0 revenue, 0 product, 2 people, we invest $5 million. We don't believe in trickling in money and entrepreneurs spending 2 years raising money every 30 days. We want you to be heads down and build something. We expect 0 revenue for the first 2 years, and we expect you to build something special at the end of 2 years. That's just our model. We're different a little bit. I used to run ATDC. If any of y'all are familiar with that, don't hold it against me. I actually know how to build companies. I did a stint. I sold my last company to a group in the Bay Area and commuted for 3 years to San Francisco. And then a guy named Frank Geary called me up. Anyone know who Frank is? Okay, so Frank calls up and says, hey, we have all these projects going everywhere. Are you willing to jump on a plane and go solve the world's biggest building problems? So material science, computational design. I'm actually published a textbook on computational design theory that's used by a lot of universities. Bragging a little bit, just got translated into Mandarin and Korean. Kind of cool. But it would bore you, so don't go out and buy it. So did that for a year, jumping around. My last company before that was RCMS, which I had sold. And before that, Versa Technologies, which we took public. So we took that from about 2 people, I don't know, it was like 800 at the end, 2 to 800 in like 2 years. Well, in the NASDAQ, so it was a good ride. You'll also find that there's gaps because a lot of my gaps are sabbaticals. So I do exits and then I take a year off. I take a year and a half off. I take 2 years off and do various things to myself and with others. Whether it's meditation, yoga, surfing in Costa Rica, I was MMA training for a while until they told me I was too old. that I couldn't take a punch. I could take a punch really well, I just couldn't recover very well. It took me a little bit longer to recover. And I think all those things are kind of important in terms of living a whole life. Any questions? This is a small group, so ask questions as we go. No? No, I'm absolutely disinterested. Ask my kids. Ask my 13-year-old. Like, I'm lame. No, I literally get interested in a lot of things and just ADD to hyperfocus, right? So this talk, I host a chai, so a tea every month at my house. And it's literally become this thing where all the friends that you run around and say, hey, we should grab coffee, we should catch up. And then 2 years later, you haven't had coffee or caught up. So it's this open invitation to my close friends, about 30 to 50, and about 15 show up. And it kind of came out of these conversations that we have. And we have amazing conversations, whether it's around technology, gender bias, which apparently I am, just all these things. We have lots of conversations about what's going on in our companies, what's going on in the world, what are we all doing different. And part of this kind of topic came up. And everybody's like, oh, you're going to mix religion into startup world. And I'm like, well, Hinduism isn't a religion, so that's not true, right? So, but it really started with this innovation cycle and this idea of innovation and this idea that we run through these cycles and everybody's trying to innovate. And my thesis is that most people don't even know what innovation is. I get a lot of tweets, mean tweets from corporate people because I've been on record. All the innovation centers you see at Coke and all those folks, there's zero innovation happening. Just look at the people that are there. They're zero qualified to do any kind of innovation. They're marketing employees to get young people to come work for their companies. Who wants, which millennial wants to go work for a hardware store? This many, right? So I've been pretty open about my view of who's innovating and who's not innovating, and it's my opinion clearly. So, but the idea was that really this idea of an innovation cycle, that it starts somewhere. And what I found curious was that you can't really talk about where innovation starts. It's just a cycle. And it related a lot to kind of Hinduism. I got this idea. There's a company in India called Reliance Industries. They're probably maybe as large as GE now. They own everything. And the two owners are the richest people in the world. And I was out with their chief strategy officer, and he's like, yeah, we've been doing this stuff forever. It's reincarnation. It's Hinduism. Like, innovation's not a new thing. I was like, hey, I'll take that from you. I'll borrow that. And it's really the idea of creation, maintenance, and destruction. And the simplest form of that is if you don't destroy things, there's only enough space. And think about it for yourself personally. You guys are probably running multiple projects, doing multiple things. Unless you get rid of something, you will never have space, mind share, time, money, all those things to focus on the things that matter, the things that are important to you. You can't do all the things, even though we try to. So Brahma being the creator, Vishnu being the preserver, and Shiva being the destroyer, right? And that's the roles, right? The roles are that everybody has in Hinduism in this situation. Everybody has a very specific role to play to keep things in balance, to keep things at par, to progress. Does that make sense? Please ask questions if you don't. And by the way, there's no test. Well, maybe. I don't know. And you see this in industries, right? You see this idea in industries that companies are created, they build to a certain point, they go from no cash flow to lots of cash flow, then they go to diminished cash flow, they cut their expenses to try to increase cash flow, they maybe sell to a private equity, or they go out of business, right? There's lots of businesses that make really bad gross margin and really poor cash flow percentage, but generate lots of cash flow that private equity loves. Some of those get destroyed, right? Any ideas? So name 3 companies that have been destroyed by innovation? Huh? Yep. Webvan might just be too early. Netscape. Not exactly. Not exactly. Netscape exists. Ask Mark Andreessen all about it. Yeah, Blockbuster is a classic example. And, really? One thing, so because it'll keep popping up. Yeah. Okay, it's just going to keep popping up. I don't know. So we've seen this case, right, of companies getting destroyed. So I was at an innovation panel last week, which is always fun. So I had, to my left, I had the head of innovation for Georgia Pacific, and I had the head of innovation for Delta Airlines. You all view those companies as innovative companies? So the topic was, how should startups do business with these large companies? So I was very quick to say they shouldn't, they should destroy them. That's your job as a startup, is to put them out of business. It's your job, right? Put a bogey on them, put a bullseye on them, dismantle their organization, dismantle their customers, exploit them. That's what we do. Why play with them when you can exploit them? And the head of innovation for Georgia Pacific was like, wow, that's really, creative and collaborative. And I was like, we're not about collaboration. With entrepreneurs, we're about kicking you in the face. That's what we do. And he said, well, no, we're innovative. I was like, your innovation is killing trees. That's what Georgia Pacific does. You optimize the killing of trees and how often and how easily, and you create paper dispensers that allow people to pull lots of paper towels and kill more trees. That's your model. And to make two brothers rich. He's like, no, that's not true. We're doing innovation. I was like, well, Dyson came up with the Airblade. Why don't y'all have a competitive product? And he started to explain. I was like, oh, that's right. It doesn't kill trees. All right, core mission is kill trees. That's how you monetize. They're in the timber business. They're worried about yielding more trees so they can kill more trees, right? That's their business model. And of course, Delta chimed in. It's like, oh yeah, we're innovative. I was like, you're a business that files bankruptcy every 20 years. That's a shared monopoly that is basically subsidized by the government. That's not even a real business. I wish I could get that deal. So all these companies are ripe for destruction, right? And that's what the core mission is. This idea of entrepreneur, if you're really good at innovate, doesn't mean you can go build a company. You can go build a B2B social media analytics tool and go sell it to sell it to Coca-Cola so they can make us all diabetic. That's awesome, right? Or you can actually build something innovative. And that's what we really focus on. So I've had this term about being pedestrian. We all, as entrepreneurs, find pedestrian problems. Oh, this doesn't work. Oh, I hate that. Or this is too expensive. Or this doesn't work well. That's okay, right? And by the way, whatever pedestrian idea you find, there are at least 10 million people on the planet that are observing the same pedestrian problem. You're not that special. You're not observing a problem that's that special, right? Every startup I see in Atlanta, just about, there's a analogous startup in every major market, at least 3 or 4 of them. Can everybody understand what a pedestrian problem is, right? You walk by and you're like, hey, that's a horrible pothole. Guess how many people walk by that same pothole on any given day and say, that's a horrible pothole. Someone should do something about it, right? So that's okay. What's not okay is a pedestrian solution. To say, oh, there's a pothole, let's put a metal plate on top of it, right? That's not an okay solution. An okay solution is to understand why that happens and create the next generation asphalt that never fails, right? That's an interesting solution. No questions? Okay. So startups that fail startups fail for lots of reasons. Generally, they are not solving real problems, right? And if you look at the cycle with Hinduism, it's about a cycle, right? It's about the creation, maintenance, and destruction, and cycling through that constantly. And you have to do that to yourself, you have to do that to your company, and you have to do that with how you look at things. So 2 years ago, I did this experiment, 12 startups in 12 months. What do you think the lesson I was trying to learn of making 12 startups in 12 months? That's a good one. What else? So, right. So maybe that would be like kind of a ABCDEF testing, right? What I was actually trying to do, I feel like most entrepreneurs are great at starting, they're bad at shooting. You have to shoot fast. You have to say, that is a waste of my time. These people are like, I had one startup that lasted 2 weeks because my development team missed the first deadline. Shot it. Like, go back, go find a job, get your resumes out. You failed. What does that mean? You know, you have a 1 week deadline, you can't hit the first week of a deadline? I didn't want to live the rest of my life with you. Right? This is what this is going to turn into. You're done. You're out. Next. So it was a lesson on, can I shoot fast? Can I see the early indications of things that are going to waste my time, waste my energy, waste my resources, which are money, time, my network. Right? You can only call so many favors to have people help you out, right? Why would I spend any more time? And you see that with entrepreneurs all the time. Oh, we just raised $50,000. By the way, if your startup needs $50,000, don't start it up. Right? That's not enough money to matter. Right? You can't do anything with $50,000. You can tinker, right? So the idea is, if you really look at where you spend your time and how you do things, you have to be constantly creating. What people want to do is create. Look at their LinkedIn profiles, right? Everybody's on 10 different companies and board. Everybody wants to create. Nobody's maintaining. They barely maintain, right? And they're definitely not destroying. Right? So you have to destroy these things in order to make space for other things. And part of solving problems is sometimes you think you're solving a problem and you realize it's a symptom. It's not really a problem. And then you spend all this time, but the minute you realize you're not solving a problem, what should you do? You should shoot it. Move on. Lay everybody off, shut down the space, move on to the next thing. Right? Because you're wasting your time. You need to think about that. So capital is never who thinks there's a problem with raising capital in Atlanta? Everyone. You know who are all the people that are complaining? The people that don't have solid startups, that don't have track records. Capital is the most portable commodity on the planet. I can wire $50 million across the planet with zero footprint in 3 seconds. It's the most portable commodity we have. So if you have the best idea and you're solving a real problem, the capital comes to you. It will absolutely come to you. And usually the people that are complaining are not doing this analysis. They want to keep pushing that rope. No, I'm solving this problem. No, I'm doing this. No, this is what I'm doing. The worst one is, this is what I'm passionate about. That's not the right answer. Right? That is not the right answer. You should be passionate about solving a problem. So everybody's heard the term pivoting, right? So pivoting is not about why or what your mission is. It's how. How am I going to approach it? I want to solve this problem. Here's how I'm going to go after it. And you go, oops, that's the wrong answer. Let me pivot and figure out a different how to solve another problem. If the problem statement changes, it's just a different business. Send everybody home. Right? It's the method of how you attack the problem. And so generally the reason investors don't invest is either the problem you're solving is just tiny, it's a very small market, or it's because the solution you have just isn't that interesting. Right? It's just not that interesting. I do a lot of coaching with entrepreneurs, and I budget about 5 hours a week to help other people to come in and spend 30 minutes with me. Here's what I ask. My first response is, that's an amazing idea. I love it. So I'm going to go do it. We'll see you. I'll throw $10 million at it. I'll ramp up 200 developers tomorrow. I have all the contacts. I love it so much. I'm going to go do it. I don't need you. Please leave now. And they're so used to hearing no, they don't know what yes looks like. And they don't understand, why do I need you? Because you have the idea. It's such a great idea, I don't need you. Because your solution is lame. I'll go solve that same problem on my own. Which is what you should be looking at. Everybody's so focused on building their pitch decks and pitches around the idea that someone's going to tell them no. What if it is the best idea? What if you presented and that person that has the money, resources, and experience loves the idea? They should go do it, right? And then why do they need you again? It happens in the Valley all the time. People are constantly stealing each other's ideas. It's a culture. It's a cultural thing. And if I steal your idea and go make $1 billion company out of it, you should be flattered that I stole your idea. That's the model. No, so the question was, why should you go create a pitch deck? That means if you can't be in a situation where not only is that a great idea, but you are uniquely qualified, you've built intellectual property, you've done the homework, you have a head start, then I'm going to bet on you, right? Then there's something interesting. Just an idea and the 10 Kawasaki slides of the idea, right? I'll tear you apart. If it's a great idea, I'll take it. And you should think that way, right? If it's a great idea, the other person's going to take it. So what is your defense mechanism around someone else taking it? One of our companies we just put $6 million into a few weeks ago, 0 revenue. We recruited a team from Korea to move. We relocated them here. You know why? They were the best in the world. We pay well. You need to move here. I want the best in the world. And the first thing we did was sue everybody. Nike, Under Armour, Victoria's Secret. It's a smart textile. Real-time biometrics. Put a shirt on, you find out everything about you, right? It can even sniff out toxins in the air kind of thing. They've all violated it, right? They all wanted to settle. We put $6 million in. We already had lots of dollars, more than $6 million, in offers to settle. And we've said, sorry, we're not settling. You're actually in our way. You need to stop selling your smart shirts. You're in our business. Get out of our business, right? If that company, when that company came and pitched us, how are we going to go do that? They have the patents, they have the idea, they have the know-how. I need them. So how are you invaluable to your pitch deck? Most pitches I see, the person involved is not valuable. They have no unfair advantage. At least tell me you're going after retail and your father-in-law is the CFO of Home Depot. That's pretty cool. Now you have an advantage, right? At least you're gaming the system. So the idea that entrepreneurs kind of go with the flow, it's, and all this maverick stuff's kind of silly, but literally you're about exploiting opportunity. And the way you exploit opportunity is by the hack, right? You have to have a way to hack the system that no one else can. And you should always question, like, God, is that even legal? If you're questioning whether it's legal, you're on the right track. Right? Oh my God, that might not be legal. I better look, like, that's a good idea. I like that idea. Any other question? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. To get out of my business. I don't want you in my business. You're in my business, get out. Cease and desist. Pull your product, pull your marketing. Actually, we didn't want them to pull their marketing because that helps us. And by the way, we waited strategically after one of the companies had just spent $25 million on a great marketing campaign. We were literally like, hey, they're getting ready to launch a marketing campaign. Let's wait a few weeks for our press release. Let's wait a few weeks for our litigation. Let them go spend the money and educate the market for us, $25 million worth of free marketing to us. Why wouldn't we? So this idea, the idea is to like be smart. Think about how, once again, think about how you can work less. Right? This idea that we're going to hustle, we're going to do more, we're going to outwork. Right? Those are all great ideas. How about we don't outwork? How about the other people are outworking because they lack talent? They're compensating for talent by working hard. They're compensating for thinking smart. They're working hard. Right? It's not how many phone calls a salesperson makes, right? It's how much they sell. Any other questions? Sure? So what is innovation? There is one book that I assign to everybody, and now I'm actually assigning it before people come and get coaching. Like, you can't come and meet with me until you read a book, which is not, I'm not a big reader, by the way. Once again, ADD issues. I get to the first paragraph. There's There's a great book called Abundance. Anybody read it? Oh man, then I could have talked about this and like taken credit for it. Otherwise, there's always someone in the room that calls like, you're just mimicking what Abundance said. So Abundance is written by the founder of Singularity University and the X Prize guys. Everybody familiar with the X Prize? X Prize. So this year the X Prize for carbon is a $20 million prize for someone that can figure out how to take pollutants and turn it into graphene. Did I tell you about the portfolio company I mentioned in London? Hopefully we win it, right? $20 million gift money, by the way, non-dilutive, non-anything. They just give you a bucket of money and say thank you. So they're the ones that wrote this book. And I really just love the theme. So it's abundance, technology, and really innovation is about creating abundance from scarcity. And it's a simple, simple idea. And this is from the book. So if you have an orange tree and you go through and pick all the oranges that are within reach, you don't have any more oranges, right? Because you're done. It's now a scarcity. So you invent a ladder. And now oranges are no longer a scarcity. And that's the entire idea. So innovation should be driving about what is once known as being scarce to abundant. So if you innovate clean drinking water, right? 97% of the world is covered in water. It's all salt water. If you figure out how to convert salt water into fresh water very efficiently and easily through innovation, we no longer have a water problem, right? So if you focus on that, right, the whole idea of innovation is scarcity to abundance, right? Scarcity of life. We're looking at right now at a breast cancer vaccine, right? Do I have to worry about if there's a market? Do I have to worry about my Twitter handle? I could care less. Breast cancer vaccine. I don't have to worry about the market. What I have to worry about is, can we pull it off? There are $15 million and can we do it? And 15 million in go, oh, we didn't do it. Oh, darn. I can move on with life and feel good about it. But I will tell you, when we do fail, we at least feel good that we tried. We did try to solve something, right? So that's creating abundancy of life, right? Extending people's quality of life. So if you focus on that, and that's why there's this idea of what is innovation, right? So Coke's Innovation Center, what are they going to innovate? Are they working on the water problem? Or are they working on how to increase Diet Coke sales? Because it's chemicals, right? Everybody's drinking kombucha. What do we do? I can't stand it. It's like really not my thing. So are they working on that? What is Home Depot working on in their innovation center? What is Georgia Pacific's Chief Innovation Officer working on? Are they looking at how do we create better wastewater conversion of wastewater problems? What are they working on? What's Delta working on? Are they figuring out a way that we can all not impact the environment and spend and contribute with when Cisco first launched telepresence back in '97, I was like, this should put the airlines out of business. That was my hope, right? That all of a sudden we don't have to jump. I was jumping on planes, by the way, 200 days a year. It's kind of my travel, right? Did it for 8 years. Try not to do it as much. I was like, great, everybody's going to be on telepresence. I don't have to jump on planes anymore. No, that didn't really happen. But it's definitely changed, right? We aren't jumping on planes for every sales meeting and every interview. I used to go interview people, fly into a city, sit at the airport hotel, and have people come through and see me and then fly back. Right? We don't have to do all that. We can do FaceTime, WebEx, whatever, to get to know people. So we have seen impacts around there. So what innovation is ADP, payroll processing, doing in their innovation center to create abundance from scarcity? And I tell people this is the singular thing. If you think you're being innovative, what are you doing? I figured out a hashtag optimizer. Maybe. No, it's not. Right? Any questions? I highly recommend reading Abundance. It's just I've been reading it to my kids. I have a 13-year-old and 15-year-old. And so telling them to read is like, telling them to not play video games. So I've been actually reading it to them every night. I've done that for a while. Yeah. It's marketing. How many of y'all want to go work for a stodgy, not innovative company? Exactly. Who wants to go work at a hardware store? Who wants to go sell sugar water? Who wants to go work in the growing field of payroll processing? Who wants to go work in the cash register business? Who wants to go work in the credit card transaction processing business? Are those all interesting? No. We have an innovation center. We're doing innovative things. Innovation. See, I'm the Chief Innovation Officer. I sit right next to the Chief Sustainability Officer that does nothing either, by the way. I have a team of 3, right? That's the model. So it's marketing. Which, by the way, I've had a few of them say, why are you like, I'm not telling people that if they thought about it for a second, wouldn't figure out. How do you recruit the top talent out of Georgia Tech? We're innovative. We have an innovation studio. What is Southern Company doing in their innovation center over at ATDC? What's the first thing they did? They have a big flat panel when you walk in. It tells you about all the great things they're doing. First of all, in a Class A office building, you can't do anything innovative in a Class A office building, by the way. You have to do things where you can break things and set things on fire and do interesting things. We built out 10,000 feet over on West Side, took an old cabinet factory, built it out, and we blow stuff up. We're always breaking things and doing things. Anastasia works with me at our robotics company. There's always things being tinkered on and broken and reassembled and disassembled and all that good stuff. It's really hard to do innovation in a Class A office building. That's your first sign. Okay, so this is kind of a chart that, I don't know if y'all can see it pretty well. So, because I'm a dork, I had to create a chart and a curve. And this is my evolution of innovation. So this is time on the horizontal and innovation on the vertical. So, does this have a laser pointer? Okay, so at the bottom, we have fire, right? That's innovation. Then we came up with language. So what did language do to take from scarcity to abundance? Anyone? Communication of thought, right? We're communicating, I mean, it's so efficient, right? Language is so efficient in terms of communication of what I'm thinking. So for fun, I kind of said, here's all the companies that aren't really innovative, but really kind of evolutionary. So language, that's Twitter, right? Twitter didn't really innovate anything. It's just the next step of, we're all going to talk in 100 and something characters for the rest of our life, right? We're going to live in the world of hashtags. What was next? Trade. Trade was huge. Why was trade important? All of a sudden you get to kind of outsource and do the things that you're good at, that you have resources for, right? That maybe someone else has different resources for. And we can trade resources. So that creates growth. So I kind of, that's Tinder, right? No. Farming, Instacart, right? So I kind of went through and just kind of put it. So all of these guys fall short of what innovation is. So you have farming. I know it's hard to see. This is probably why you shouldn't sit in the back of a big room. Farming, the wheel, money, paper, the microscope. So this keeps going on. And what I'm saying is, where does innovation flatten out? What has to be invented? When do we reach singularity where innovation stops? The time machine. Once you invent the time machine, all innovation ceases. We reach singularity. And of course, people are like, well, what if you want to invent a better time? Like, you take your old time machine into the future and you get the better time machine and come back. So part of what I coach, and we deal with a lot of professors and scientists, is like, so how far away are you from the time machine? How many degrees removed is your invention, your idea, from the time machine? What order of magnitude away are you from inventing the time machine, or something close to? Because if you fall short in inventing the time machine, you're probably still doing pretty good, right? Whatever your innovation is. You know, oh man, I didn't quite make the time machine, but I cured cancer. You know, that's horrible. I messed up, I failed, right? So that's what we look at. in terms of innovation. And if you look at this, how does this relate? You know, the innovation cycle and creation and destruction. Sometimes things naturally destruct, right? It's just the order of how things are. But sometimes they are willed into destruction, right? Netflix put Blockbuster out of business. There's no debate there, right? There's zero debate. They put a bullseye on them, and everybody says, they say great things like, well, why didn't Blockbuster just buy them? Do you think Netflix was going to sell? You don't think this conversation's happened? Wayne Huizenga is a smart dude. They tried to buy. They tried everything. Then they said, oh no, and what do you think Netflix did? Blockbuster shows up and says, I'll offer you $1 billion for your company. They said, nope. What do? You say no? If you're smart, no. You say, let's keep talking. Let's keep talking. It'll be really interesting. Let's keep talking. Can you meet in 3 months? Yeah, and they're big corporates, so 3 months is fast, right? You're moving at light speed. They say, yeah, let's meet in 3 months. They meet in 3 months, they have an off-site strategic planning, whatever nonsense. But yeah, this is great, let's just keep talking. And 2 years goes by, and they finally say no. They just got a 2-year head start. Blockbuster's been sitting there going, oh, we thought we were gonna buy you guys and be in this business. And for 2 years, they've done nothing. Now they're playing catch up. That's being smart. I had a company yesterday call me. They said Miller and InBev are fighting to buy us. I was like, don't return their calls. Yeah, they're going to be the same company. I think they're like a few billion short, 170 to 180 billion. Who's counting? Don't call them back. Or have a meeting with them. Talk about all the awesome things. Let them talk. String them out. Value only goes up because they'll stop all their R&D. They'll stop all their exploration while they talk to you because they're a big company. They have a deal. They know they can do a deal. String them out. Any questions about this? No? Anybody gonna invent the time machine? Anybody gonna try to invent the time machine? So creative destruction is a term. It's a very Harvard MBA term. And it's this idea that in order to move on, there's a natural occurrence that happens in terms of creative destruction. So things get destroyed by a natural occurrence, and then they get fulfilled with things that are more interesting. And there is a natural cycle of that. How many of y'all think that the cable companies will exist in 3 years? Some way, yeah. Right. I saw some math on the CEO of Disney when he came out with earnings. The number one reason why people keep cable is why? ESPN. And if ESPN, if Disney, which owns ESPN, if their royalty from the cable companies is less than the ability to charge you, so how many of y'all are ESPN fans? Okay. How much would you pay per month to have, if cable no longer supported ESPN, you had to pay a monthly fee, what would you pay? $10 a month? 15? 25? Right. 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 From the cable companies, right? So anything north of $8, why bother with them? And I get to own you as a customer. I get to have real data about you. I get to test different things, right? That's going to take time, and there will be some natural occurrence that happens. Because remember, the Apples of the world and the Netflixes of the world, they kind of just stood back. Do you think that their game plan was never to there was a game plan. Like, we are going to put cable companies out of business. That's why Hulu came together, right? Which is basically a shared monopoly of programmers to say, let's hedge our bet. Those guys may go away, right? I will tell you, with entrepreneurs and startups, read what's going on with big company and say, what would I do if I want to be subversive, right? Subversion is a beautiful thing. Every entrepreneur should be subversive. If you wanted to be subversive and you had this like evil laugh in your background and you saw these things going on, what would you do? And we talked about InBev and so Anheuser-Busch and Miller trying to merge for $180 billion. What's the opportunity there? Start a craft brewery? Maybe not. It's kind of crowded. Maybe crowded. They will have to get rid of assets for pennies in order to make the deal happen. because otherwise it'll be too big of a monopoly. That's how I think. My first thing is, oh, that's, so I'm calling my buddy who's a brewmaster, and I was like, what do you think they're going to get rid of? Might be interesting. Right? That's my hobby, is doing things. But look at these big corporate headlines and try to read through, not what directly is going on, but what maybe indirectly is going on. What's the subversive idea to exploit a transaction? Who has heard of BCG? Yeah? Boston Consulting Group. Has everybody seen the chart with cash cows and stars and all that stuff? If you haven't, Google it. You'll see it on your laptop. It's a classic chart. In fact, I think it's like clip art in Visio and PowerPoint now. It's so pervasive, right? It's like a SWOT analysis of sorts. And so what BCG really did was said, hey guys, as big companies, you have to figure out where you're making money and where you're starting, your product has a lifespan, right? So when Kodak realized, hey, this digital environment's coming up, maybe we should do things more in digital and take all our money we're making off of chemicals and push it into digital, they didn't move fast enough. They did some, but they were trying. The early digital cameras, there were a lot of early Kodak digital cameras. They just didn't move fast enough. So it's an allocation of resources that says, I have cash cows that make me money every day. Let me take some of that cash flow and invest in things that are the future and that are interesting. So those are the stars. So it's about taking money from the cash cows and putting it into the stars. So as you look at companies and you look at what you're doing, there's such a focus on how do I get to cash positive, how do I get to cash flow? And who thinks that what a great gross margin is for a startup? Not initially, but your scaled, modeled gross margin. What should your gross margin be? Anyone? Who knows what gross margin is? We shoot for 60%. Anything under 60% isn't innovative. When you go into an Apple store, what's the salesperson at the Apple store? What's their commission structure? What do they get for selling you an iPhone? 0. They get a salary. Do you ever walk in and say, hey, I'm trying to understand the comparison of the features and functionality of the iPhone 6 versus an Android versus of this? No. You go in and you talk about, I'm not sure if I want the Plus or just the 6. Right? They don't have to work that hard. You show up with money in hand to spend, and you're just not sure which one of their products or all of them that you want. So what do you think their margins look like? Does anybody study the margin cycles of an iPhone? So iPhone 6, they make very little gross margin. iPhone 6S is like off the charts, right? Because they optimize their supply chain, costs are way down. There's not a lot of incremental hardware improvements. It's mostly software and all that. They make all their money on the S, right? So the first one, it's less, let's say 20%, right? For ongoing, it's just a machine. It's a cash machine. They don't even have to try. So it's never about the new phone release and looking at how much that costs and how much money they're making at the new hardware form factor. It's always on the S, or people moving to that, because that's where all their money is. So think about that. So think about how you're spending your time, right? Destroy the things that are not on mission with what your value system is, whether it's money, whether it's lifestyle, whatever it is, right? Like I always joke around, like I either eat food for body or for soul. Yeah, I'll eat a cheesecake. Right? It better be a really good cheesecake. Otherwise, I'm eating kale, right? Which, by the way, kale does not taste good. No one will convince me of that. It's just good for me, apparently. No, make kale chips. That's not a thing. They're called Doritos. Like, kale chips are not real. So think about that. Really thinking about, like, what do I need to create? How do I spend my time creating? How do I maintain the things that I think are going well, right? And they're creating value. And how do I destroy the things, the projects, the people around me, all those things that just aren't, it's time. right? It's time to move on. And especially when it comes to startups. I met with a guy 2.5 years in, he's still at the same place he was 2.5 years. I was like, do you not value your life, your time? He's like, well, I'm learning. I'm like, you're learning how to waste your time. You're not really learning, right? You're not really learning. You think you're learning, but you're not really learning. It's time to move on. Any questions? Everybody gonna move on? Everybody pick one thing that they're gonna not do? You just defriend somebody? Like, this guy keeps posting things about the Republican Party. I'm done. All right, so what? All right, so there's always a so what. So your time matters. It absolutely matters, right? Every second, every minute, all of it. How you spend it, who you spend it with, what you're doing. It's also great to have quiet time, right? I do a lot of me and Anastasia were talking about it. I was up in Philadelphia for 2 days doing this workshop where all we did was meditate and breathe and not talk for 2 days. That's okay, right? It's okay to make space. Actually, quiet time's a great time. But your time does matter, so just be deliberate and intent on how you do it. And really think hey, is this even worth my time? And a lot of people feel that only people that have wealth or that have a high billable rate or whatnot have this as an option. Is it worth my time? Everybody has that option about, is it worth my time? And startup entrepreneurs are the worst about it. They're the worst about it. They don't value their time enough. If they did, they'd be more successful faster. Surround yourself with crazy smart, right? Really crazy smart. I was having a conversation about zebrafish genomes yesterday. I don't even know what a zebrafish looks like. If one showed up in the ocean, I wouldn't know what it looked like. I'm assuming it has stripes. I'm bright enough to understand that. But beyond that, I would not know it's a zebrafish. Why? Because the person was ridiculous smart. It's taking zebrafish genes and putting it into people because they illuminate, and so therefore you could track cancer by illumination. So when you had cancer, it would we would literally light up. That's a cancerous skin. I'm like, that's crazy. Tell me more. I'd rather just talk about that than talk about whatever else people want to talk about. So surround yourself with crazy smart and the best. Like I said, we recruit globally, we relocate, we try to do all these things to really find the best people, because that's a great place to start. By the way, we don't believe in paying below market. We generally pay well. We have lots of conversations with our people. Anastasia will it's like yesterday we went to lunch, I was like, God, we need to make more money, let's figure that out. That's my conversation, right? I want to help you, let's figure out how to do that. I also have this rule about working over 40 hours a week. My guys the team hides from me when they come in on weekends. They don't let me know. Because they know I'll come up and be like, hey man, is something wrong? Something okay? Are you okay? We're in here all weekend. Everything good at home? You're avoiding your girlfriend? What's going on? Right? And they're so they don't want to have that conversation with me. So when they work more hours, I don't know about it. I'm not in there driving them everybody needs to pull their weight and work all night and here's some beer, work all night. I'm if you're working all night, something's not working in your life. Think global and universal. We have a way in the US of thinking we're the center of attention. And I've been asked by a lot of people, why have you lived in Atlanta all your life? We have a great airport and it's so cheap. I mean, think about it. What other city can you be in and be nonstop? My next little travel stint is here to San Francisco, back here to Milan, to Denmark, to Hamburg, back to I couldn't do that if I was on we're just bouncing around. And no connecting flights. How awesome is that? I always think when I land in Atlanta and people are for those of you that have a connecting flight to Birmingham, I'm oh, that's horrible. That sounds horrible. Birmingham and a connecting flight? I do not want to live my life that way. So we do have a great benefit. We talk about the transplant culture around here. There's not a lot of people from Atlanta. That's a huge benefit. Take advantage of it. Ask people. I met a guy that went to an accelerator in China. I was I had no interest in his business plan. I was really? Where? When? I have a friend here. And I was more interested in that. I'm why did you do an accelerator in China? He's because it was China. Like, yes. Have y'all heard of Startup Chile? You should look into that. They pay you like $60,000 there. Like, go down to Chile and like hang out for 6 months, and they pay you money to go be in their accelerator. You get to hang out in like Santiago or somewhere. I mean, that doesn't suck. So really think global about stuff. Exhibit detachment. I do a lot of hackathon judging and startup weekends. And what does everybody do, the first thing they do about their company? Where do they spend all their time drinking Red Bull and eating Doritos thinking about at these hackathons? The name. The name. And there's always a graphic designer like, oh, I have this really good logo. Right? I mean, that's where they spend all their time. The problem with that is you start building equity in your idea. And when you build equity in your idea, being detached from it is really hard. Right? Who's the guys here in town, Gimme Vend? What if they decided that they didn't want to do vending machines anymore? And they spent all this time coming out with a logo and a name, and we love the name. Oh, the business sucks, but the name and the logo is really good. There's actually, I mean, there's an interesting principle in India. I learned this with my dad. Like, they named him a horrible name. It actually means sour. It translates literally to sour. Like, Dad, that's a horrible name. Why would they give you a horrible name? Because the 3 babies before me died in childbirth. And they didn't want to give me a good name because they thought I was going to die too. And they felt like if they gave me a bad name and I died, it'd be okay. And I'm thinking about that. I'm like, okay, mortality of startups, pretty high. Maybe like India in the 30s or whatever, right? So the minute you put your name on it, and you have a cool name, and you go get the domain name, you have all this attachment. Does everybody know about Flashpoint? Flashpoint, the accelerator? I told Merrick first, I was like, you shouldn't allow people to have names. Their company should not have names. They should all have numbers. Or some, Project Titan, something interesting. Because the minute they get a logo and a color and a brand and all that, it's done. They're stuck. They will never pivot from their idea. All right. Well, thanks for having me. I don't know if it's what you expected. It's the first time I've given this talk, actually. It literally was just kind of from chai. Questions? Comments? Nothing? All right. Well, thank you.